Hey, everybody. Welcome to Distorted. I try to talk about mental health and get some clarity going here. Today's topic, I want to talk about change and commonly known 5 stages of change. State them really quick, and then we're going to break them down. Pre-contemplation, contemplation, planning, action, and maintenance. Let's start with the beginning pieces because sometimes it gets repetitive and people wonder why does there have to be pre-contemplation and contemplation? Essentially because there's a lot of thoughts that come in and out of our heads. You know, we think so many thoughts that are unused in a given day. Some of those thoughts are probably good that they're not used, and some of them you wouldn't want people to know you were thinking them. But pre-contemplation is just the entry level of consciousness for an idea to pop in, transient at best, where it comes and goes based on a reminder or something that just triggers it in a daily activity. You might have a pre-contemplation about something that would eventually be a major change in your life. Let's say like a diet thing or a workout thing or changing your job or moving to another state. You might pre-contemplate because someone mentions it in a conversation and you end up having a dream about it in some type of subconscious way, that you have an initial thought that you might be the kind of person who would move to another state to look for employment. Somebody on a TV show did it and you thought about it, and that was it. A pre-contemplation of, do I want to put effort into this? Do I want to really sit down and think about what it would take to do this thing, which should start to get into the contemplation, where you are going to think about something specific and more than once, whereas pre-contemplation doesn't usually add that piece. It's just a fleeting thought, something that pops in, you don't elaborate on it, and you don't follow up on it. You don't have conversation about it. It is simply an idea that came and went, but you might have a reoccurrence of it over, say, a monthly, 2-month, 3-month period where you have a thought that pops in, you just don't investigate it. You don't add anything to it. Contemplation takes you to the next level where when you think about it, you start to compare that idea to other ideas that you've had. You start to do reflection on what it might look like. And obviously you can see how that would transition into planning, which will come next. But the thought process, the contemplation, is the ins and outs of the possibilities, right? The what ifs. The planning takes care of the what ifs by you activating. So before we get to that, let's talk about the what ifs. So the contemplation of, I'm thinking about going into therapy, and I might start to think about what that actually means. Not what I'm going to do to get it done, not making phone calls, not anything behavioral, simply thinking about, have other people gone to therapy? If they have gone to therapy, what was the outcome? If the outcome was positive, can I get there too? If the outcome was positive, what did they do differently than I'm willing to do? If the outcome is negative, will I be worse off? Contemplation takes on everything. You can spend a ton of time in contemplation. You can spend too much time in contemplation. But again, it's the ins and outs. It's the positive. It's the negative. It's processing. It's normal female communication. Haha, that's funny. So it's just having the idea of, I want to talk about this so I can start to raise awareness, possible outcomes, positive or negative, what I would do to navigate them, hypothetically, how it might affect me, how will it affect other people. Is there anyone else who would be involved? You can see how many different things are involved in contemplating the eventuality of doing something. And so when you're in this stage, this is often the time when a person would come into a therapeutic setting because this is the time where they want to compare those thoughts with someone else who has information about that topic. Information gathering is important, right? When you're pre-contemplating, you're not necessarily gathering information because you're not going to thoughtfully really go through the idea. It's just an idea. It's not a thoughtful one. Contemplation is now thoughtful, so you sometimes want to bring in experts. You want to bring in other opinions to talk about the ins and outs of what you're about to do, the positives and the negatives, why you would pursue it, what would keep you from pursuing. You can see again how it's limitless. You can contemplate forever. And what you see then in that stage is the convincing to push forward into planning, because planning starts the commitment, right? You can think about something forever and never actually commit to it. Anybody know anyone like that? I do. You're thinking about it, you're talking about it. There's a commercial that just came out not too long ago, just made me think of it, because ADD is a terrible thing to waste. There's a commercial that popped up, and the guy's always talking about he's do a kitchen renewal, and he keeps telling all these different groups of people. He's at the barber shop telling everyone, we're going to get our kitchen remodeled, or he's with his friends at someone's house watching sports. We're going to get our kitchen remodeled. And it's just different shots of him with different hairdos over a time period talking about getting his kitchen done. That's contemplation. If anybody's familiar with that particular commercial, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it's just that idea that he's in all these different environments and all he's doing is talking about it. He's sharing it with people. He's getting feedback in some situations. And no plan. How much money? We start to talk about the plan at this point. The money, the time, the investment, the environment, the where it's going to be, the when it's going to be. That's when you get to those questions, the how, where, when, what, why, right? You get to that next piece where I have to start plugging in the sacrifices. The commitment comes in because now I'm setting aside time. The plan is I'm going to work out and I'm going to do it in the morning. So now I'm planning time for it. Now I'm past contemplation. The plan is this is when it's going to happen. This is where it's going to happen. This is how it's going to happen. This is what's going to be done once I get there. Whereas contemplation is more about the fabricated ideas, the hypothesis, right? The possibility of what's to come. Planning is making something actually happen. So you might say the planning would be comparing prices on something, because now I'm committing the fact that money's going to be spent on this, and I've got to start planning. Where's that money? Do I have to work overtime? There's going to be a behavior involved in that. So now the planning kicks in, and I can start to manifest what's going to happen. Oftentimes people will write this down, and the plan becomes the how it's going to get done. And so once the planning comes in, this is also a phase of therapy in a lot of ways, because when you start to process, when you start to think about the outcomes, the planning is, how do I prepare? What am I going to do to make this change, right? So now there's a plan. Well, I'm going to have to work out. Well, what's that going to look like? Well, now I have a plan. I'm going to go to the gym. And then you take the plan even further. On, Mondays, it's this part of the body I'm going to work out on. On Wednesdays, it's this part. The plan starts to come to fruition. Now you see it melding directly into the next phase, which is the action. You have to do something. So this means you would go to the gym or you would go to the job interview, or you would spend the money, or you would change the actual diet. So the food, the money is invested, the food's different in the fridge. All these things, the action requires you to behaviorally step into it. A lot of cognitive stuff at the beginning. Now we're totally into behavioral. You are now doing, you're creating action. You can contemplate. I want to write something down in a journal. You can plan. I think I'll do that at night when I'm rested. And then you buy a journal, you buy something to write with, and you write. Okay? So this is all, again, when we talk about these things, you say, well, geez, change is so difficult. Change comes with a maturation in the way you approach the activity. To really invest in the doing, it can be broken down like this. I could do something just to get by. In other words, I'm going through the motions. I'm not enriching or growing through the activity. I just know enough to get it done. I learned enough. It happens at work a lot. I learned enough to get by, to perform, to be satisfactory. I don't really want to grow in the area. I don't want to be enriched by it. I just want to get it done. I don't agree with it, but because it's work, I'm going to do it, right? So I contemplated it usually through complaining. I don't like the change. I don't want the change. I don't like the technology. I don't think it's going to work. Lots of complaining and contemplation when it comes to a work thing. And then the idea of planning, well, that usually is handled by the administration that's imposing the change, right? They say, we're implementing this new thing, and it's going to start on this date. Well, that's part of planning. They're letting you know ahead of time there's a plan to this. You have 2 months to deal with whatever the old stuff was, the new stuff starting January 1st. You hear that a lot with a lot of businesses. January 1st, we're changing the protocol. We're going to do something different. So the planning is taking place to let you know, come January 1st, you're going to be doing. It's going to be the action phase. It's implemented. It's already been contemplated because it's already been set in plan. It's planned, so now it has to be activated. So see how that would, one pushes to the next? It was an idea. It's now been processed. There's a plan to make it happen, so you have to engage in it. Once it's engaged in, you're in the action phase. You're doing it. This is significant, especially for therapeutic intervention, because the therapist is usually going to go away. If it's being done correctly, the therapist does his job so he can be removed from, or she can be removed from the process. The client has to take that over at some point. So you're talking about what it's going to look like. You're planning for what it's going to be and when and how. And then you activate it. Activation, in a therapeutic sense, is usually closely related to graduation. That's usually when therapy can come to an end because you are now acting out on that plan. Now, there is a caveat to that, which I will talk about when we get to maintenance, which is the final stage. If I'm now in the action stage, I get to decide how much investment. And as I said before, you could be just entering in a very constricted way or rebellious way. You're doing it because it's an obligation, but you're not invested in it, so you're not growing from it. You're not being enriched by it. Understand, for maintenance to take place, there's two different versions of that. Maintenance out of obligation will look robotic at times. It will look disconnected, detached. You'll still perform, but you won't necessarily benefit from it. Treading water is a lot different than swimming toward shore, right? A direction, growth, an outcome is more encouraging for someone to maintain the change. This is significant, yes? Because the maintenance of the change is life-changing, as we would say. Change, that's a repetitious way to say it. But if I commit, if I use my action for growth, for enrichment, I have the potential of changing completely. Maintenance then becomes your new real. We see this a lot with grief, that acceptance at the end of the grief stages becomes a platform for a new normal. The loss is recognized, but the maintenance of what you're doing from that point on is without what you had before that. Your maintenance is different. How do I maintain myself in this new environment? So again, enrichment and growth means you'll have a better understanding of why you're doing it. The idea then becomes you have more commitment, so you're more likely to stay in maintenance. You're more likely to keep doing the thing that got you there. You didn't just activate it. You're more likely to keep activating it. If you keep activating it, it becomes permanent. It becomes maintained. That's change. That's the stage. That's why it's considered the end of the change. You're no longer having to contemplate, plan. You are in continuous action, which requires maintenance, and maintenance turns into permanency, muscle memory, mental memory, cognitive change, all that type of stuff. Maintenance is the platform for you to have fully changed to something different. That's usually what we're looking for. Why does it fail? Well, it fails because the investment isn't there on any of the 4 stages beyond pre-contemplation. Contemplation, not thoughtful, but just going through the motions. Then you create a plan that's incomplete. The plan that's incomplete is easy. It's shortcuts. I get there, I start doing it, but I'm not fully invested. I'm doing it out of obligation. I'm doing it because someone else told me to do it. Imagine how that would work for a lot of people who do show up in a therapeutic setting because someone else told them they should go. You're starting from a less invested place. You didn't think about it. Someone else did. You only thought about them thinking about it. Your contemplation ran through the lens of what someone else, why did they possibly come up with this idea? My plan to do it out of obligation. Well, I planned it. I made the preparation to do it. I maybe they found the therapist for you, but you all right, it's planned. I'm going on Monday. Then you show up. And the first thing you say in the paperwork is, I'm here because someone else told me I should be here. Or several people told me I should be here. And that resistance that plays into that shows itself in your performance. So my commitment to the action is less than heartfelt, right? I'm going through the motions. I'm here. I'm doing it. Very easy to say, well, I did it. It didn't work. I changed. I went. I did the thing. Nothing happened. You didn't commit to yourself changing. You committed to someone else's idea that it would help you. That doesn't take as much effort. Then maintenance becomes impossible. There is no maintenance if there was no action. Right? You didn't do it. You didn't commit to it. What are you maintaining? Dysfunction? You maintaining the distortion that you had at the beginning that said this wasn't worthwhile. That's why I didn't commit. I didn't give it all that much thought. So understand that the impetus of change is from the motivation that you're entering into it willfully, knowing that you're not going to be the same at the end that you were at the beginning. The process gives you platforms to make that adjustment, first cognitively, then behaviorally. Okay? So pre-contemplation, contemplation, planning, action, maintenance. Maintenance in a therapeutic setting is you don't go on a regular basis. You go periodically for a refresher, for encouragement, for a reminder of the work that it took to get to that place. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a nice, healthy reminder. We don't usually, when we're in maintenance, like from a spiritual perspective, maintenance is giving gratitude to God, is to having grace for other people who are struggling with what you went through. So my ability to step into that with some sense of understanding helps me maintain it, but it also helps me accelerate that process for other people because I'm role modeling what it looks like to change. Most fundamental change that takes place is not in our hands. That's a topic for another day, but salvation that comes from something else besides us is a different type of change. It's a permanent change that happens because of what God's able to do. And you never go back, even though people think you do. You don't go back. It's in you. So we'll save that for another day. Maintenance is important, whether it be therapeutic or anything else that you're doing. To continue to have success in the new you, you have to maintain what you went through initially to get there. It's as simple as that. So you may go back and think about it. You shouldn't have to plan it anymore. It should become permanent. There shouldn't be a plan anymore. The action that you're doing is now repetitive. You can see yourself in that change. You are actively engaged in that change. You are to the point where you can promote that to other people. That's the enrichment and growth that usually takes place. Obligated change is usually the version of non-permanent change. It never gets to maintenance. So let me just say that again so it makes sense to everybody. When you change for obligatory reasons and not for your own motivation, that change doesn't stick. So you say, well, then it's not change. And I say, exactly. You did it. You didn't maintain it. So that being said, there's shortcuts, there's easy ways, and I'm saying to you, that's usually what ends up people cycling. That usually is how people end up repeating the same mistakes. True change means you are invested in it. Maintenance can only come from that investment. To do the thing that you've designed to do, planned to do, activated in your life, you will have reason enough to maintain it if you've invested in it. And then you reap the benefits of it. You'll see what it does for you as you live life from that point. So, again, therapeutically speaking, you now know how to be resilient with whatever situation you're in, with whatever condition you might have. You've now built up a resume to be resilient. You know how to handle it. You don't need to go back and be reminded how to handle it. You might have a bad day, but you are consistently managing your symptoms, and that's what it looks like to be successful. If the plumber comes in and fixes the pipe and it breaks the next day, he didn't really fix it. You don't want a Band-Aid on a cut that's bleeding profusely. You need surgery. So understand what I'm saying is that if you try to go through without commitment, you won't really change, and you will just blame that as part of the system as to why you can't change. We don't want that to happen. Maintenance can only come from action that's repeated, and investment will cause you to be able to do that at a higher level. That's all I have on this for now. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thanks for joining us on Distorted. Follow us however you can, but primarily we're on YouTube, Rumble, Apple Pod, and Spotify. Add a comment, share it with your friends. We appreciate you.